going aggressive.
But I think this also makes sense, right? Because Hikaru going for the King's Indian defense, which worked to perfection against Magnus, was the style he needed against the player he was playing. He very well knows Arjun. I think his strategy today is going to be to try to get those positional strategic angles in the game, somewhere where he's seen Arjun struggle. So trying to avoid those aggressive combative play might be something that's part of the plan for Hikaru.
Maybe, but it doesn't look like his position is very pleasant right now. He shuffles his queen across, asking for a trade. Will Arjun oblige? Will he keep the tension? A lot of options, extra minute on the clock. Arjun's heart rate back down to a very normal rate, born in a refrigerator, as they were saying. And Hikaru definitely feeling the pressure early doors.
And now there's a couple of options, of course. Arjun could bring his other knight into e4 and hit both bishops and say, okay, or he could just take the light squared bishop here. Maybe there's a couple of third options as well, but I would imagine hitting the minor pieces, giving maximum flexibility is useful. Does he eventually want to take the bishops off in this position?
I think he does, but this is the move I was expecting from Arjun simply because he likes to keep the tension on the board. He didn't want to rush with it, and that response was not what I was expecting on the board. The bishop came from there. It would make a lot of sense if Hikaru had the time to develop that queenside rook to the center file and then retreat. But he just voluntarily disconnected the two rooks. This looks quite unnatural.
Yeah, very odd. It just smells bad, Hikaru's last few moves, losing time with his pieces, and Arjun says, you go back, I go forward. The white queen steps to a very, very nice square, pressuring black's dart squared bishop, which is kind of caught in a bind, can barely move. Black's pieces all tied up in knots. This is a dream start for Arjun. Okay, the bishop does in the end shift, still defended by the black queen, but it still needs a move or two to get to safety.
This is just beautiful, right? Look at each and every piece that Arjun has, everything playing at the center of the board. And usually when you're able to capture central squares and place them the way Arjun has, you can direct play on either side. And that's why the center in chess is so incredibly important, so that you can decide to get to the right flank or the left flank depending on where the weaknesses are. You could also think about improving the diagonal of his light squared bishop. A lot of tender spots to target to. This is a beautiful start. And look at that tactics on the board by Arjun.
Yeah, let's delve into this one. That white knight jumping forward, very, very ambitious. It was a trick that Hikaru Nakamura dodged. And if we just rewind, action replay on our green analysis board here, the white knight dropping into d6, hitting the black rook. If it had been taken, it looks free, but it is poisoned. Bishop takes h7, check. Getting out the way, and look at this, the white rook suddenly pounces on the d-file, hitting the black queen. It's all about the d-file, and right now, the two white knights sitting pretty, hitting the black rook, hitting the black bishop. One of them has moved, but the f7 square we're highlighting there, also very vulnerable to white's army. All of the white's pieces are flooding forward. Hikaru here barely holding the barricades. This looks beautiful for white.
And as you try to keep that pawn defended, Hikaru moves his rook back to f8. When a player has to put that bishop, which has just moved to e6, all the way back to its starting square, when the castled rook comes back to that position on f8, you know that the opening's gone completely wrong for you.
Right. Well, let's have a positional question about this opening that I'm quite keen to hear the answer to. The theme of the last 5, 6, 7 moves, lots of knights moving, lots of bishops moving out of the way. Arjun Erigaisi continuing to try and ratchet up the pressure on the board. How do you tell when it's too much? We sometimes speak of chess players overpressing their position or keeping the tension on the board too long. How is it possible to tell when the right moment to strike is? Because that must be such a delicate balance.
It is hard. Normally, that's where you need to back it up with calculation, looking into the future, starting with those forcing moves, the checks, the captures, and the threats. Normally, there's also a bit of a trigger, and the trigger here could be the fact that black has lost so much time. The bishop, the light squared bishop on c8 has moved twice, only to go back home. The black rook on f8. If you count castling, it's moved 3 times, went to e8, back. The black bishop on h6 has moved 4 times. The black queen has moved 4 times. The black knight has retreated back. So all of these things adding up, your opponent retreating, that normally is a signal you go forward, you can cash in some way or other.
It almost starts feeling like Hikaru is setting up the board for the next game. Everything retreating to the first rank. You look at him, and that's all you need to know about this position. And meanwhile, Arjun just continues to improve, gain more space, solidify more pieces on the board already on beautiful squares. I mean, this position is a dream one with the white pieces for Arjun, playing a player like Hikaru, completely dominating the board, all sides.
The outposts here for the knights are really strong as well, because either of the knights can jump back to e4 as well and continue to move towards the king side. You can't play f5 because it's pinned by the bishop, which leads me to think it's weird thinking king h8 might be an active move here, but is freeing up that side of the board the plan for Hikaru to release himself from this bind?
He has to find a way. You're completely right. So one idea could be to do it on the right flank, but I think the last move by Hikaru sort of hints at how he's trying to achieve that. He's just moved the rook away from the white queen's eye line and wanted to push the b pawn forward to b6 to kick out the white knight. Now, I think, speaking about when is the trigger that you need to go concrete, that was it. Arjun maximized his pieces, got the trade in, and we're seeing a forcing sequence of moves playing out here.
Yeah, and I was going to say the bigger shock to me is that Hikaru wasn't making any faces. He wasn't shaking his head, but it has started to begin. He kind of winced as he offered that queen trade. Look at Black's pawn structure now. Doubled F pawns. That is not a nice sight there. Black's bishop very offside, just staring at a brick wall. In the meantime, if Arjun wants, he can get hungry here. He can trade off knights by winning a pawn. And there we go. The whole of the black queen side is about to disappear. Hikaru's got some tricks up his sleeve, potentially. I'm really shocked that he's not making faces, though, Tanya. He is dead lost. He's busted, but he's not reacting.
Yeah, usually by now you see all those trademark Hikaru head shakes and where he's really... And there it is. At least a slight one, where he's furious with himself. But I think there's this realization that this has gone absolutely disastrous, wrong from the start. Something that we saw in game 1 against Magnus as well. In fact, it's gone so wrong that Arjun doesn't need to rush with capturing that second pawn. He instead starts to improve the position of the king because that queen side isn't going anywhere. What Arjun wants to do is get his king closer to the white rook so that he's able to unpin the bishop.
Now, the clock situation may or may not come into play here. It's 4 minutes versus 5.5, so it is worth pointing out that Hikaru Nakamura has got more time on the clock. That said, if this position is bust, it means it's a little bit easier. As long as you can see the plan through to the finish line, you can start playing really quickly. So that 1.5-minute advantage, it means a lot if it's 30 seconds versus 2 minutes. Maybe not so much if both players still have more than 3 minutes.
And Arjun is very fast. He doesn't like to be lower on the clock. Arjun, he normally tries to use the clock as a big weapon. So, yeah, for now, I think it's okay. But if he does get to around the 1.5-minute mark, we saw it against Firouzja in his semi-final. He can crack under that pressure. Here, Hikaru is setting up tricks. He wants to line up both of the black rooks on the c-file. This is Black's next move, pretty much no matter what, unless he's forced to take a timeout. So Arjun needs a solution. He needs to get his bishop out of dodge here. He needs to protect it somehow, or he needs to push his pawns and hope. There we go. He attacks the black rook. We see Black slide across and the white pawn's marching. 2 squares from touchdown.
Arjun's calculated his way all the way through. The black rook comes to defense. But look at that bishop, that extra bishop that Hikaru has is so far away from defense. And Arjun just 2 moves away from getting that A pawn to support the B pawn. A5, A6, rook A8, B8 queen. Game over. That's his plan. And I think Hikaru Nakamura is completely helpless against it. This is the first time in my life that I have seen Arjun's heart rate cross 100. That's never happened. This guy doesn't move beyond the 66 mark. That's the golden spot for him. This tournament, we've often seen him spike that. Just goes on to show how much this means for both players. For Hikaru, over 100, and there we have it, mirroring each other now. But this is big. A third place fight, but everything on the line for their teams.
Arjun goes to the gym. Heart rate can't get above 100. Personal trainer doesn't understand medical science, wants to study this. It turns out all he needs is a good position over the board and a conversion potentially for 500 club points and $145,000. I'll tell you what, that would get my heart rate up.
Wow, and he's dropping by the second. Arjun down to around 80 now. But that's because he's calmly realizing he's about to win. The underdog in this match, Arjun Erigaisi, he takes the point. Hikaru resigns.
Hikaru Nakamura resigns. Sustained pressure. Amazing knights over bishops in the middle game there. Arjun Erigaisi takes the lead in this 3rd place match. Potentially critical for Gen G, but also it's very early days. A reminder to everyone watching at home, this is not a best of 4, it is a best of 6, but it is Arjun Erigaisi who draws first blood.
It almost felt like Hikaru went on self-destruct mode in that game with the black pieces. From the very start, sort of retreating move by move, wasting so much time on the clock. And Arjun, every single play by him was an improvement move, and then just finished the game off in a forcing sequence, sacrificed it, and it was the first threat that was being set up here. And this moment, Arjun gave up the bishop, the pawns just too strong, nothing to be done by Hikaru in this one.
Yeah, he ended up resigning Hikaru because the black bishop is too far away, the black king is too far away. White's A and B pawns would have stormed forward to promotion. You said, Tanya, that you'd never seen Arjun's heart rate rise over 100. I've never seen Hikaru react so calmly to what was a pretty disastrous game. He was never in it, Hikaru Nakamura. He cannot repeat that opening he lost against Magnus in this double Queen's Gambit.